Ethic 1. Take responsibility for your fear of failure. We want to achieve the goals we set, yet there is much to be learned and enjoyed in not achieving every single goal every single time. What we experience during the process of reaching and failing can change our lives for the better forever. The salt water splashed my face as I was falling asleep. Pat and I had entered the small cabin after our early morning rowing shift. Watching the sunrise was beautiful, but now I was exhausted. "Oh man," I shouted, "my sleeping bag is soaked." Then I heard it. A wave slammed into the stern of our 29-foot ocean rowboat and began flooding our sleeping cabin. Terror-fueled adrenaline rushed through my veins. Trapped in the confined space, I was hammered by a rushing water as the small compartment rapidly filled with the salty sea. This wasn't happening. At least, I didn't want to believe it was happening. But there we were, on the edge of the Bermuda Triangle after rowing away from the coast of West Africa 73 days earlier. I saw my crewmate Pat in a crouch position. He was lunging and grabbing at the hatch door as the ocean violently entered our tiny cabin. We were hundreds of miles from the nearest land. Jordan Hansen, Marcus Pukonen, Pat Fleming, and I were rowing unassisted from Dakar, Senegal to Miami, Florida. We were alone. We collected scientific data and communicated our experiences to the outside world using satellite technology. Rogue waves, high winds, and absolute darkness gave us a visceral respect for the tremendous power of the ocean wilderness. Whales, turtles, and flying fish inspired us with wonder. "Get out now!" I screamed to Pat. He was lunging at the port side of the boat, hoping his 170-pound frame could prevent the inevitable capsize. Seconds earlier, Pat had grabbed at the hatch door to slam it safely shut, but the powerful water threw the hatch wide open, tearing both handles out of his hands. The sleeping cabin was our main protection against the violent indifference of the ocean. A closed hatch door kept the cabin full of air. It was an airbag that could rewrite the upside-down boat. In training, back in the Puget Sound off Seattle, we had capsized our boat, and it had easily returned upright. Over the past 10 weeks at sea, whenever a giant wave hit our sealed cabin, the boat righted itself, and we were held unturned. The buoyancy of the cabin and the weight of our ballast kept the boat in its upright position. But the hatch door was blown open, and the ocean water was rushing in like a waterfall. I pushed Pat out of the hatch with all my might. "We're going over!" I yelled. "Get out of here, Pat!" And that's when I ran out of air. I was underwater. The world went silent. That time underwater in the small cabin felt like an eternity. My eyes popped open. The water pouring into the cabin was filled with tiny air bubbles. I was taking in as much information as my brain would allow. I saw a floating cushion and punched it. I felt an air packet. I went for it. I gasped at the trap air. My survival instincts had kicked in. All language was gone from my brain. I was completely present and alert. I thought in pictures, emotions, and visions of energy. I knew it was go time. I would either get out of this cabin alive or stay trapped, leaving my wife a widow and my son and unborn daughter without a father. So I paused. I had not felt such deep presence since international racing. My body was alive, my mind still, focus, presence, volition. It was time to perform. I needed to deliver my best. Instinctively, I slowed down to speed up. Each second felt like a minute. I took a second breath. My inner voice returned. "Take your time, poise, do this properly." I dove into the cabin's rising water. A blue light shone where the daylight was penetrating through the seawater into the submerged cabin. I swam towards the light, not even feeling the salt water that was burning my eyes. I squeezed myself through a tiny cabin door that was half a foot narrower than my shoulders. I grabbed onto the safety line and pulled my body out of the cabin. It was eerie to see our vessel underwater. Lines hung underneath the water, oars bobbed, sundries cast off from the exposed deck of our ocean rowboat floated in the void. I popped my head above the water and gasped a big breath of air. Seeing Pat on top of the boat, I scrambled up to join him, grabbing onto the daggerboard that was now pointing up into the sky. Pat had grabbed a life jacket on his way out of the cabin. Jordan and Marcus were floating in the water. A big wave crashed down on us, a reminder that we were still in danger's powerful grip. Seconds before the capsize, Jordan and Marcus had been on deck. Jordan was steering the vessel and hooting with pleasure and admiration of the powerful seas. The wind was just over 20 knots, and the waves were just under 7 feet high, certainly not the largest seas we have encountered on this voyage. Marcus was literally caught with his pants down. He was sitting on the 5-gallon bucket that we used as a toilet. Then, 2 short, boxy waves collided with our boat, instantaneously flooding our sleeping cabin, flipping us over. Another giant wave crashed over me as I clung to the daggerboard of the overturned vessel. I looked down at Marcus and couldn't help but crack a smile. "I know this is the wrong thing to say at this moment," I said. His eyes were burning red from the salt water. "But there's a piece of poop floating beside your head." "Yeah," he said. "The shit really hit the fan, didn't it?" "Is everyone present and accounted for?" Jordan boomed. Pat and I were riding the hulls like cowboys. Marcus was floating on the side opposite to Jordan. We did a quick count. All 4 members of the crew were present and accounted for, and then moved into action. The greatest cure for fear, it seems, is action. No one was feeling particularly afraid as we moved to correct our upset. Jordan passed me his brown leather cowboy hat, which I promptly put on. It was warm and surprisingly comfy. Jordan went underwater to pull out our life vests. They were clipped to the grab line for easy access. "Let's turn on the beacons?" Jordan asked, referring to the ACR Artex emergency locator beacons we had with us. We glanced at one another. Do we want to be those guys? The ones who call for help? Is this a real emergency? I looked at Pat, who had been on the other side of backcountry mountain rescues and had helped a number of people get out of trouble. "I'm okay being those guys," Pat said as he held up his blinking beacon. "I've already pressed mine." We laughed. Jordan flipped the rest of the switches. Was anyone going to show up? Jordan swam under the submerged hull to free the life raft. The white plastic case opened easily enough, but the boat was tightly packaged in plastic wrap. He swam under the submerged hull again and found the knife we had tied to our deck, which he used to take the shrink-wrapped plastic off our life vessel. We heard a hissing sound as the raft inflated. I jumped into the water, still wearing Jordan's leather cowboy hat, and looked up. Odd moments of calm occur amid disaster, when focus is lost, when you have no job to do or are thinking about what to do next. But fear preys on us in these moments. That's when I felt the severity of our situation. Fear snuck in, uninvited. If action is a cure for fear, then inaction is a cesspool for doubt. An uneasy terror penetrated my being. This was not what we planned. We were supposed to be in Miami in less than 2 weeks. I wanted to see my pregnant wife, Becca, and Jefferson, our 2-year-old son. As fear and non-acceptance of our situation festered, I looked up. An ocean seabird, a skua, was hovering over our heads. I instantly thought of Rick Mrazek, an educator from Lethbridge, Alberta, who had fervently supported our mission and died of a heart attack while we were at sea. The bird's eyes locked with mine. He was gently soaring over the waves in our capsized mess. I felt oddly at peace. "Rick?" I asked. "Is that you?" Was it Rick's spirit that propelled that particular bird to that particular spot at that particular moment? No one can say, but I know how real the feeling was in my heart of hearts. Our boat was named after Jordan's late father, and the ashes of both of Marcus's parents were in the sea. Through the eyes of that ocean bird, we felt supernatural protection. Someone or something was watching over us. The terror receded. Jordan says that birds are an omen of good spirits and good luck to those at sea. We had the spirit world on our side. I felt my own spirit rise. There were no other humans for miles around, but if anyone could help us, it was someone from beyond this world. It was at that point that, despite our massive failure, I knew we would be safe. Hope returned. The clustered science of non-attainment. Research tells us that people who set goals are happier and more successful. Professors who set goals earn tenure faster. Employees who set goals get larger raises. And students who have goals set for them learn up to 250% faster than those who do not. When we are achieving a goal, our brains release the powerful neurotransmitter dopamine, which makes us feel good and motivates us to attain even more. So what about those people who set goals and then fail to achieve them? What about those people? Well, that's all of us. One problem with setting really, really big targets, like my team's goal of rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, is that our brains react negatively to them. Science shows that the larger the goal, the greater the consequences, the more stress and anxiety is created within us. We then worry even more that we won't attain the goal. We worry about feeling like a failure. We fear failure. That fear can stop us from taking responsibility. The best way to get around this natural mental barrier is to manage the risk of a single, large goal with a series of smaller objectives that don't carry the same burden of potential failure. A cluster of smaller benefits that will be achieved regardless of the outcome of your massive goal. If you're about to spend 2 weeks preparing a pitch for a request for proposal, what else will you gain in the process besides a possible successful end result? In his best-selling book, The Black Swan, Nassim Taleb writes about unlikely outcomes. If we plan smartly and anticipate unlikely extreme events, we can have more positive results and fewer disasters. I agree wholeheartedly with his philosophy. Our goals should be structured to minimize the likelihood of strong negative outcomes, while simultaneously maximizing the likelihood of strong positive outcomes. Clustering smaller, beneficial outcomes under one large goal is powerful. It's a winning strategy that can also create more unpredictable wins. Cluster benefits are a group of goals that support and elevate your next gold medal moment to its highest heights. For the 4 of us in that rowboat, our ultimate goal was to experience and share the ocean wilderness as we rowed from Dakar to Miami. Indeed, by setting this massive goal, we could achieve many other valuable objectives in the process. One objective was learning. I had to learn how to fundraise. Learning project management skills was also key, as it took 4 years to put all the pieces of this expedition into place. Another objective was connecting. I connected deeply with each of my teammates, each of whom are close friends to this day. I connected deeply with the environment. I connected deeply with God and the spirit world. I connected with my authentic self. I connected with students, professors, volunteers, and family members who supported us and followed our mission. Discovery was another objective. We collected data on the state of the planet's oceans. We experimented with how humans and smartphones interacted. We documented how human psychology reacts to extreme environments. We observed rare weather phenomena. Cluster benefits hedge for a great future, regardless of your big goal outcome. Remembering cluster benefits in times of doubt gives you the courage to take responsibility. Let's say your goal is to roll out a new product in Q1 of the next fiscal year. Instead of focusing on that as your only outcome, uncover the clusters that your pursuit of this single large goal will achieve. The process of pursuing your product release will support your personal and professional development in many areas. The first cluster might be to initiate strategies that increase your proficiency for new product design. The second cluster might explore different ways to engineer the best, most cost-efficient design. The third cluster might be the career-enabling connections you develop with your colleagues in pursuit of this important release. There might be dozens of smaller clusters within the larger goal of rolling out a new product release, and each will be more easily attained than the overall outcome. Clarifying to yourself that you are gaining in many areas will boost your motivation and drive to completion. Outcomes do matter. Winning is more fun. Realizing big goals feels incredible. Reaching a goal that requires you to grow significantly in the process is far more thrilling than attaining an easy goal. When a company encourages its employees to achieve audacious goals, it has higher employee engagement, and the organization takes responsibility together. That said, we need to set our goals like an intelligent investor monitors their finances. We must protect the downside while maximizing the upside. Fail forward. The emotional downside of big goals isn't the fear of feeling you've failed if you don't attain them. It's the feeling that you are a failure. The key is to realize that there are valuable lessons to be learned from non-attainment. I personally believe that failure in many ways is as important to us as success. Success and failure are, in fact, two sides of the same coin. Indeed, the very word success is derived from the Latin succedere, to come after. Success comes after you've delivered a freighter-sized effort of work, and that work often takes us through failure. One cannot exist without the other. This interplay is the yin and yang of success and failure. We cannot have one without the other. Rudyard Kipling, in his powerful poem If, tells us to treat those two impostors just the same. Forward-thinking organizations embrace the philosophy of failing forward. Netherlands-based ABN AMRO Bank started an institute of brilliant failures to encourage entrepreneurship. Recognizing that 90% of drug trials fail, pharmaceutical giant Eli Lilly and Company began throwing R&D-focused outcomes celebrations, failure parties, 2 decades ago to honor data gleaned from trials for drugs that didn't work. Tata Group has a Dare to Try award. Procter & Gamble has a Heroic Failure award. And Google's X Moonshot Lab rewards failures as well as successes. Why reward failure? Perhaps it's because the most successful people tend to be those with the most failures, as pointed out by Dean Keith Simonton, professor of psychology at the University of California, Davis. Successful people have more ideas, both good and bad. We need to recognize failure as another way to take responsibility. How we react to failure can directly dictate our next successes in life. Can we make the most of our failures and then wear them as a badge of honor? We know that failure is a stepping stone to future greatness. So many great achievers thank their failures for being their greatest teachers. But when we are living the guilt and shame brought up by failure, we can have difficulty seeing how this new, unpleasant reality could possibly give us a boost. By identifying cluster benefits on the road to our largest goals, we can see the value of an audacious vision, even when it's not realized. When we then set our next major goal, we can use cluster benefits to minimize our fear of failure and maximize our opportunity to achieve results as unlimited as our imaginations. It was just past 7:30 a.m. After a short team meeting to ensure we were all safe and our survival equipment was in good order, we decided to attempt to write the James Robert Hansen. We spent the next 3 hours trying to flip our boat. On our first try, we tied lines to the riggers opposite us and used our body weight as best we could, rocking, leaning, and using the dagger board as leverage. After a few unsuccessful attempts, we ran lines under the submerged deck to the riggers underneath us. This gave us a bit more leverage, and we almost got it. We were leaning with all our might and had the boat nearly at the tipping point. That's when Jordan let out a gentle prayer to our SCUA guardian angel. "Come on, Dad." Tears welled up in my eyes, and the prayer only made us pull harder. Pat let out a passionate scream. "Come on!" We hauled with all our might, but one by one, we fell off our lines. We were more than a bit demoralized. I climbed back on top of the boat and announced to my teammates, "Remember the first 3 rules of the James Robert Hansen? 1, don't die. 2, don't kill your mates. 3, don't sink the boat." Well, 2.5 out of 3 is not that bad. "It's pretty good, actually," Jordan chimed in. At least we were staying positive. With our try at righting the boat unsuccessful, we were becoming noticeably exhausted. Pat was zoning out. "I think I need to go into the life raft," Pat said with a dazed look on his face. "Go, go," I shouted. "Get warm. You too, Jordan. Your skin is looking purple." Jordan glared at me. "I look good in purple," he quipped. During our writing attempt, Jordan had spent 20 minutes cutting off the emergency life raft plastic casing and the poop bucket that was clanging against the hull. He was exhausted, and he knew it. The water was sucking out all his heat, and Jordan was approaching hypothermia. He swam over to the life raft. Once in the life raft, Jordan started eating with Pat. "Come and eat!" Jordan cried, his mouth full of dried fruit and meat jerky. Marcus and I weren't hungry, but we appreciated that Jordan was looking out for us. We had deployed the sea anchor from our life raft, but it had become tangled under the boat. Marcus dove under to see if he could free this necessary piece of safety equipment for our life raft, which would prevent it from capsizing in large seas. He dove down a couple times, but was unsuccessful. "These lines are crazy," he said. "They are tangled everywhere. There's no way I'm getting that out. Marcus handed me Rex, the rubber Tyrannosaurus Rex that was our mascot, the sprite of our boat. He was tangled in the sea anchor line. I cut him loose and handed him to Jordan. Thanks, he said, his voice quivering as he held the toy dinosaur. All present and accounted for, I replied, a little choked up and feeling pleased that we had rescued our 5th team member, who was still wearing his safety harness, by the way. Within 5 minutes of our capsize, the U.S. Coast Guard base in Clearwater, Florida, had received our emergency distress signal. We did, however, not know this. We chose to assume that we would not be rescued until another vessel showed up. We would attempt to rewrite the boat later in the afternoon using more ideas and ingenuity. After eating some rations, we examined the survival equipment that was packed in the life raft, which included a miniature copy of the Bible. Well, said Marcus, let's read it. Marcus had just gotten to a passage from Isaiah when we heard, then felt, a rumbling motor. It was a large turboprop plane. Pat screamed with excitement. We're gonna be okay! We're gonna be okay! It's a C-130 from the Coast Guard, Jordan explained. My dad jumped out of these when he trained for the Air Force. This was his living stepdad, Jim Wood, not his birth dad, James Hansen, may he rest in peace. Jordan's full story is in his book, Rowing into the Sun. Marcus and I, the 2 Canadians on board, started chanting, USA! 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 The Olympics clearly were far behind us. Get the flares! Somebody yelled, and there was a mad scramble to pull the chemical candle out and acknowledge the presence of our rescuers. The boat was bouncing and lurching as everyone shifted positions in the life raft to light the flare. Take it easy, I said. Stay calm. The Coast Guard dropped a couple of smoke flares followed by a giant orange barrel. They had perfect aim. It landed far enough from our life raft to be safe, but close enough to drift towards us with the current. Marcus, our resident frogman, jumped into the water and retrieved the neon orange barrel. The outside disclosed a short list of contents: wool blanket, emergency rations, water. Well, we already had all of these things on our boat, and the metal barrel looked like it could puncture our raft. We decided that we would tie it off away from our raft and save it, in case we were not rescued within 24 hours. We would learn later that we should have opened this orange container as soon as we recovered it. The C-130 kept buzzing by every 20 to 30 minutes. We could always see or hear the plane. Its presence provided an incredible amount of comfort. Jordan called it a life raft for your heart. Knowing that the plane was nearby kept our hopes afloat. The C-130 started dropping more smoke flares to test the wind and currents, then dropped a droid-like GPS beacon to track our location and a large yellow life raft in case our present vessel was damaged. We felt safe and exhausted, so we let each of these items slowly float away. After a few more passes, the Coast Guard dropped a second orange bin. Should we swim out and get it? I asked. I wanted that second barrel. We had another crew meeting. Everyone was cold, tired, and wanted to safely conserve energy. We know what's in the barrel. We already have the stuff on our life raft. I don't want to go. I don't either. The barrel is too far away to retrieve safely. Let's stay here. Stay together. Maybe we should go and get it, I suggested again. I kept watching the line as it drifted slowly towards us. It got closer. I could reach it. I grabbed the nylon yellow cord and started to drag it aboard. Once the canister was in the life raft, we saw that there was an updated list of contents. This list had VHF radio, clearly labeled on the contents. If that weren't enough, in large Sharpie marker, someone had scribbled, "Open me," on the lid. We opened the canister, pulled out the radio, and began our communication with the U.S. Coast Guard. This is Coast Guard Rescue Plane 1706, Life Raft, are you okay? Pat let them know that we are all safe. The Coast Guard informed us that a ship was on its way, but its next port of call was St. Petersburg, Russia. We laughed. We had rowed almost 3,000 nautical miles in 73 days since Dakar, and we were now headed to Russia. 30 minutes later, the Coast Guard informed us that 2 motor-powered vessels, also called MVs, were headed towards us. The MV Tanias Leader, headed to St. Petersburg, and the MV Hygiene, headed for Puerto Rico. We started fantasizing about what our rescue ship would be like. "I bet you the Russian ship has a full movie theater and a gym. They'll have great food," Marcus said. "And I bet the Hygiene is a luxury yacht rented out by dental hygienists. Ha ha ha, I bet you all the hygienists are gorgeous." "It's called the Hygiene," Jordan mused. "It's got to be a clean vessel. After 73 days at sea, I could use a shower." Meanwhile, the MV Hygiene, yes, spelt Heijin, was headed towards us. Believing that we were a bunch of stranded, half-drunk Caribbean pleasure cruisers who were blown out to sea. We started a countdown, checking in with the Coast Guard every 30 minutes. We gave them the full details of Greg Spooner, our mission control leader and former ocean rower, and waited for the MV Hygiene to arrive. It was a car-carrying cargo ship designed to haul Toyotas from Japan to eager consumers all around the world. We saw a rescue vessel coming from a distance and awaited orders from the Coast Guard and ship's captain. "We don't want to get in the way," Jordan said. "Let's let them direct operations. The last thing they need is a bunch of people being rescued getting in the way of their safety procedures." Pat nodded in agreement. "We have to look out for each other, though," I chimed in. "Look after yourself, look after one another." Everyone nodded in somber agreement. We radioed the Coast Guard. "Do you have any instructions for us to safely board our rescue vessel?" Yeah, was the response. "Just listen to the motorized vessel over the VHF. Your rescue should be, interesting." The Hygiene came closer, and over the VHF we started to chat with the captain, who spoke with a strong Bangladeshi accent. English was obviously not his first language, but he was clear and understandable. As he got close to us, he instructed us to cut the life raft from our flipped vessel and drift freely. The MV Hygiene is huge, and we made it aboard on our second approach to the vessel. The captain and crew behaved admirably, and we have our deepest respect for their sacrifice, skill, and bravery to get us aboard. Picture a 6-foot diameter octagonal life raft bumping against the rusty hull of a massive freighter as tall as a small apartment building. Thankfully, the crew of the MV Hygiene was top-notch. We owe deep gratitude to them and the NYK group that operates the vessel. The MV Hygiene crew were quite thrilled at the opportunity to lend a hand in the open ocean, as it's rare for a crew like theirs to perform a rescue operation at sea. Instead of their scheduled fire drill that day, they got to perform a real rescue. After watching the crew make several failed attempts to throw a tow line to our life raft, we managed to grab a successful toss and were pulled alongside the MV Hygiene. Our reward was to slam against the rusty hull and climb a 33-foot rope ladder, clanging against the hull to a welcoming committee that gave us fresh corn soup, orange jumpsuits, the key to the shower room, and then triple rations of dinner, the best fettuccine Alfredo we've ever had. Wade's wisdom. Although we had failed to reach the shores of the United States, I have since realized that there is much to learn and enjoy in our non-attainment of our primary goal. A key lesson came from a quiet conversation I had with Wade Lusney, the CEO of our title sponsor, the Canadian Wildlife Federation, CWF. He had risked hundreds of thousands of dollars on our expedition and faced the scorn of his board to make funds available to recover our capsized boat and bring it back to shore. Thanks to Wade, we recovered the boat, our science equipment, and video footage from our trip. We had stored our data and video files on board a Panasonic Toughbook, and all data from this computer was fully recovered. Because of Wade's leadership, our research projects continued. Our STEM educational programming was delivered, and our adventure was made into a documentary for NBC's Dateline. As a primary fundraiser, I felt deeply guilty and responsible for our failure. In Puerto Rico, I found a quiet time to take Wade aside. "I'm sorry," I said. "I let you down. I let the CWF down. I let the students down." Wade looked at me in the eyes. "First," he said, "I'm glad you're alive. I'm glad you're safe. I championed your mission. Had you young guys died, I would have felt responsible. The U.S. Coast Guard gave you commendations for safety. You weren't being reckless. You were just attempting something difficult." Then a smile cracked over his face. "Second, we got more media attention and better return on our investment by your team's capsize than we ever could have hoped for with a successful completion. We had attacked the media storm following our boats capsized like seasoned professionals. The day we landed in San Juan, we were on the phone, on Skype, and in front of the cameras for 18 hours straight. We took full advantage of the opportunity in our disaster and turned our near-death experience into a media campaign that gave Wade Lusney more than 300% ROI on his advertising dollars. The next time you think you've failed in attaining a goal you set for yourself, take a few moments to reflect on what you learned, achieved, and enjoyed during your own process of non-attainment. What cluster benefits remain from your most recent failure? How could this failure push you forward? What opportunity have you gained in the face of disaster? You just might be surprised by the results. There are countless examples of businesses and business people who've turned failure into success. Before co-founding LinkedIn and investing in big names like PayPal and Airbnb, Reid Hoffman created SocialNet, an online dating and social networking site that ultimately failed. Before launching the Huffington Post, Arianna Huffington had a bit more trouble getting people to read her work. Her second book was rejected by 36 publishers. Yes, you heard that correctly, 36. Before Amazon became a household name, the company's CEO, Jeff Bezos, had several failed ideas. One of the most notable was an online auction site, which evolved into Zed Shops, a brand that ultimately failed before it was reimagined as the Amazon Marketplace. I'm no stranger to failure in my personal and professional lives. I even did a TEDx talk on the power of non-attainment. I believe that having a constructive relationship with failure is necessary to living the good life while taking responsibility for our big goals. Reflect, learn, grow, let it go. I offer you a 4-step strategy to take responsibility for and then let go of regret, shame, and other emotional baggage after any significant failure. This can be experienced as an individual or tried with a group. It's worked for me and many of my clients. It could work for you too. 1. Reflect. Explore the facts. What is? Take a step back and decouple the event from your related emotions. Facts and feelings are important to consider, but are two separate animals. Seek to understand each in full. Do not hide the facts or your feelings in a little black box. To gain the most benefit from your failure, you must explore both the facts of the circumstance and your emotional reaction, with the intention of gaining clarity about what transpired and how you handled the event. Be patient. Too often, we rush through this step of reflection to avoid the discomfort of negative feelings. Rushing is counterproductive, as these emotions will resurface and hold you back in the future. Taking enough time to expose emotions allows us to move forward unhindered. To allow ourselves to release them, sometimes all it takes is acknowledging feelings and wrongdoings. If the feeling seems to stick around, set a time limit for your self-pity and exploration. Spend 30 minutes every day exploring the feeling and notice how your intensity of feelings changes over time. I find that exercise or physical movement also helps expose and release deep feelings of shame and regret. We often want to rush through this step, but this takes time and effort if you truly want to let go of the shame and the guilt associated with your failure. So, be patient. Embrace the discomfort. Lean into your emotions to process them. You will eventually separate the facts from the feelings. 2. Learn. You are often most creative on the rebound from catastrophe. What did you learn about your actions that helped or hindered your result? What did you learn from your reaction that served you well or otherwise? What did you do well? What could you change? What would you take forward or leave behind? List everything you've learned from your failure. Write it down or type it out. Getting thoughts out of your mind and into another medium helps to facilitate the process of letting go. You learn and think much better when you move the analysis from your head onto paper. While writing down your learnings, you will start to have ideas of action, new ways to take responsibility. Note what needs to change and start planning your next plan of attack to reduce your likelihood of experiencing this type of failure again. Seek out a close friend, spiritual leader, trusted coach, mentor, or mental health professional. Talk over your issues. Go deeper. Uncover the lies you tell yourself. Lean into the deeper truths that become evident. 3. Grow. What has changed? What new habits will you adopt? Have you set new boundaries? Have you clarified the expectations of yourself and others? This is the final key action step to letting go of feelings of regret, failure, guilt, and shame. These are counterproductive emotions that will hold back your progress post-failure. Address in writing how you will put each learning into daily or situational action. Anticipate the barriers that will stop you from achieving your goal. Tell someone about your reflections and new path forward. Your new habits will predicate your readiness for the final step. Your new habits will only become solidified if you mentor someone who has gone through a similar challenge. When you teach what you have learned, you ingrain the habit change and are then ready to turn your shortcoming into a proud stepping stone towards better outcomes. 4. Let it go. Move forward confidently, knowing your past failure is now a badge of honor. Your failure is firmly planted in your past, serving as a growth opportunity to better your present. Now, you can put on your princess costume, throw glitter around, and dance and sing like Elsa from the movie Frozen. Let it go, let it go. Strengthen your ethic. Reflect on times in your work and life when you didn't achieve your greatest goals. How did you feel? Ask yourself, what did I learn during the process? What new habits do I now have because of my non-attainment? What is my greatest goal right now? How can I support this one great goal with a series of cluster benefits that will be achieved regardless of the final outcome? Take at least 1 point from below. You can record it, take a picture, or write it down somewhere else. Embrace the responsibility ethic and apply this lesson to your life. Ask yourself, what have I learned by not achieving my goals? 2. Keep your ocean rowboat's cabin door latched on cruise shifts in stormy weather. 3. Worry is a sad excuse for inaction. Take action to cure fear. 4. Have faith. 5. Set goals to realize your full leadership potential. 6. Set your goals in a way that minimizes negative outcomes and maximizes positive outcomes. 7. Identify cluster benefits to drive more successes in pursuit of big goals. 8. Wear your failure like a badge of honor. 9. Find ways to stay positive in the face of disaster. 10. Look after yourself, look after one another. 11. Remember that success comes after failure. 12. Look for opportunity in every disaster. 13. Reflect, learn, grow, let it go.